Ladies, ladies and gentlemen, it is 10 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to episode 13 of Unhindered by Coding. It's been kind of a random summer with knee and surgery, and we just had a week off for family vacation, which was very nice. So, apologies for missing 2 episodes, but it was a good and important time to meet up with some folks that hadn't seen in a long time because, well, COVID and stuff. And we all did testing, and as far as I know, nobody got COVID, so that's a win. We're happy about that. So I'll be back this week and at least part of next week. We'll have to. There's some uncertainty. The week of the sort of around the 12th forward, our child is starting graduate school in library science, and we're going to be helping move out to Wisconsin. So there'll be some being gone again, but we're here for a little while, and that'll be good. So today we're picking up where we left off a long time ago. Now this assumes I can remember where we were a long time ago, but fingers crossed it'll work out. So we're still using Rust and U to build a web app to archive GitHub, batch archive GitHub repositories. We made a lot of progress the last time we were here, and we were able to get the repositories from GitHub, and that was awesome. So that was an important step. Now we're going to need to. So one of the things that came up is the list of repositories didn't update when we changed the GitHub organization. So it was being loaded once, but it was never being loaded again. And I think that's because I was doing copy and paste on my use of use dep with effects hook in U without really understanding what it did or how it worked. And I've done a little homework, not as much as I would have liked or probably should have, but I've done a little homework, and I'm hoping we can resolve that issue today. And then if that happens, the next goal would be to actually take the results and turn them into something like a checklist. Might explore using Daisy. So we've got Tailwind cooked into this thing. Daisy is a component library built on top of Tailwind. And there is a Rust library for that, so we could possibly go down that road, although I'm not entirely sure that I think the Rust library is. I'm not sure what the state of the Rust library in question is, so may or may not open that can of worms. But so maybe we'll just make the checklist by hand and not use something fancy. In theory, we have all the tools, and I don't need anything super nifty. So we'll see how that works out. So let us commence over here, and let's get the code up. Okay. Oh, and actually, why don't we start the trunk serve open, make sure we've got still a working system, and see where we left off. And we need to move you over here so people can see. That would be good. So yeah, so here's our highly unattractive system that I really need to do something about. Nothing else, man. We really could use some spacing around the edges. Everything goes right up to the edge of the window in a way that's not attractive. So we were looking at like my spring 20 software design class, and now there's definitely a pause there when it makes the HTTP call, and it would probably be good to have some kind of like loading message or spinner thing or something there, so that people don't, because it just looks like nothing happened. But it does eventually work, and we're getting the name of the repository, the description of the repository. Now, I don't know. I mean, in principle, I like the idea of displaying the description, but in my particular situation, the descriptions are, these repositories were all created by GitHub Classroom, and the students could have changed the description, but as you can see, they mostly didn't. Like, nobody did, as far as I can tell, in this one. So displaying the descriptions here is kind of unhelpful for me, but I can imagine it would be helpful for other people. I think for the moment we'll leave the descriptions there, but it isn't super helpful, and maybe we drop it later. I don't know. I'm open to suggestions. It's not obvious to me what to do there. And then we got the last updated and last push to information, which look like they're the same for, oh no, here, this one was updated on the 31st of January, but pushed to on the 3rd of February. So obviously a push doesn't cause the update to get changed. Do I see any other differences? No. Oh, here we go. Oh, this is interesting. So the last push was on the 26th of March, but the last update was on the 14th of April. So like 2.5 weeks later. Well, and here this was pushed to months later. But the so that's weird. Not obvious to me what. I'm not sure I understand what those things even mean. I wonder if GitHub will tell us. GitHub API last updated. I mean, so this is where we were. I don't think that's gonna, be helpful. Updated. Get all kinds of things. Pushed. Last pushed. No, that is not useful. Yeah. So I don't really know. They don't define what those things mean. And they list them, but you see them in the response schema, for example. Let's see that's what I wanted. Repositories for a given organization. Somewhere down here. Oh, maybe not that low. But it doesn't matter, right? I mean, the important thing is that they don't tell you what any of these things mean. They don't define their what those terms mean. So it's not obvious to me what the right thing to do there is. So, and I don't know that we could just display them both for now, and see what that does. But we could also do fancy things like on last pushed, actually get the information about that commit, like, and have the commit message displayed or something like that. In this example, none of this really matters because all of this is, a long time ago. And it's worth pointing out we are sorting. Let's see, where do we get the? Yeah, right here. So this is where we make the request, and we are sorting by last pushed, and in ascending order. So we are sorting by this date and time, technically, and we'll have the oldest first. And these are all 2+ years old. So that's clearly not a major issue. One other thing this points out is we're only getting pages of stuff here. This is not everything, and we have got, I bet it's 20. I think that in the documentation it tells us what the default is. But we're also going to have to do something about paging. We're going to have to do something about paging. At some point, because we are not getting all of them, and we could just like crank up the number to return on the page. That is an option in the I think that's an option. Yeah, per page defaults to 30. We could crank that up to 100 if we wanted to, and for most of my work, that would actually probably be sufficient, because I don't know that I've got too many repositories with more than 100. Too many organizations with more than 100 repositories in them. But that seems like kind of a cheap hack, and somebody else might have a really big class with a lot of labs, and they would find this even more useful, and so providing support for something like that would be a good thing. And we can say which page we want, so we can provide some kind of pagination. This would be a place where having a component library would be nice, so that I don't have to build out all of that from scratch, because there are good component libraries that do paging for me, and give you the control stuff at the bottom and all that nifty business. And it would be nice to not have to build all that from the ground up. But I'm not going to worry about that right now. Let's see if we can get the rest of the display to work, and in particular get the use effects to work. So let's go to the use effects problem, because that I think is an issue. So let's see what the actual problem is. So here I put in an organization, and we've got the things for that organization. If I change this to 22 and say submit, this changed to 22, but none of this updated. So it's not re-rendering, it's not revisiting the HTTP request. It's not redoing it with the new organization, and so the list of repositories stays the same. And that's clearly not great. We got to do something about that. So let's see if we can fix that. So I did some homework, and can I just let's make you go away. I did some homework, and I think I'm pretty sure the problem is my use effect with deps isn't doing what I want it to do. I had just literally copy and pasted this code from an example on the internet, because that's what we do too often. And as a colleague of mine says, copy and paste is the death of understanding. And I clearly didn't understand a lot of the details of what I pasted in here. and it doesn't do the right thing because I think I didn't know what I was doing. So I did a little reading on use effect with deps, and the documentation doesn't say very much. In fact, if we go to the documentation, so if the use effect with deps documentation that's the entirety of it, which ain't much. And this is a place where the U documentation basically assumes you understand React, and sort of tells you enough that if you know React, you'll sort of get it. And as somebody who actually has never written anything in React, I know it's a terrible thought, but it's true. I looked at this and went, no idea what this means. And so then they provide a little more information here on use effect. And the example that I copied from had done use effect with deps. So I just had that. So one thing we might try to do is just use effect and see if that improves the situation. Because here's what I think is happening. So use effect is called when the component renders. I think this gets called. And with deps, I think is telling it when to re-render. What does it depend on? So what are its dependencies? And I found this last guide to the use effect hook you'll ever need. And now this is about React, not about U, but again, since U's based on React, I found this, which I have not read carefully, ran out of time, life is a challenge. But I found this to be helpful, and I think the key idea in the with deps is you pass in a collection of dependencies, you pass in something that is the dependencies, and they tell you what this component depends on, and that determines when the component is re-rendered. And because I'm passing in nothing as dependencies right here, I'm not passing in anything, so I'm saying this effect doesn't depend on anything. It won't rerun when the repository, the organization name changes. So now what's unclear to me is whether I even need this, because we have a state, right? Yeah, we have a state. No, actually that's the repository state. We have props. So the organization's coming in as a prop. And so it's possible that I don't need the with deps, and I can just say use effect, and it will do the right thing. It will know to re-render when the properties change. I don't know, but I figure that's the first shot, is let's get rid of the dependencies business and then hope that magic happens, because that would seem to be good. Because it's got to have, it has fancy tools to know when it needs to re-render, in theory. So maybe we should be able to use them. And maybe we're providing enough information that it can infer an appropriate re-render strategy. The one thing that worries me a little bit is when we get the repositories, then it will it changes the way things look because it displays the repositories. And I'm wondering if that will be seen as some kind of state change, and then it would run this again with the same organization, and that would sort of stink. But let's see what happens. And we've got lots of console log stuff floating around telling me kind of when things are getting called. So actually it's worth maybe develop show JavaScript console. Hello, there we go. So we can see here it called repository list. That's this call right here with S20, called use effects with depths with S20, the spawn local with S20. Then it called repository list again with S20, and I think that's because all of the repositories got listed, and I think that sort of changed the state, and so it did a re-render of the repository list at that point, going from here an empty list of repositories to, oh, we have lots of repositories, let's draw them. And then when I did S22, it called repository list, but it didn't do any of the use effects spawn local stuff. And that's what would have made the call to GitHub. So we want to hopefully see the right kind of change here, but hopefully not an infinite loop kind of change. I don't want to have this hammer GitHub, because then GitHub's going to shout at me and say, no, you can't do this anymore. And that would be bad. So let's see if we can switch to not using depths. So I want to look at the so use effect takes a closure, and that's it. And use effects with depths takes a closure followed by a collection of dependencies. So I think we just need to remove the set of dependencies and change the name. Let's see if that happens. Wah, 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 wah. And then I think that just goes away. Fingers crossed. And do we compile? We are compiling. Oh, we don't like that. Use effect takes one. Oh, interesting. So and that was visible here. This does sort of say it's taking an argument. And here, this does not take an argument. But it's not obvious what this argument does. Maybe it's the dependencies that are being passed in? That would maybe make sense, that your closure is past the set of dependencies or the current state of those dependencies, so it can look at them? I don't know. Well, let's see if we can get this to compile. And la 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 la. Success. Okay, so we compiled. Now let's hope this doesn't go in an infinite loop. That would make me sad. Submit. Oh, it does. Bad, bad, bad. Close, close, close. Okay, that was not a good choice. Don't like that. So we're going to back up to having the dependencies in. Okay. So what is being passed in here? Mystery. Let's log mystery. Oh, it's empty at the moment. What if we change this to be organization? What happens there? Okay, doesn't like it. Oops. Oh, so I probably need to like clone it. Sure, we'll clone that. I've got to do something about all this cloning because that is just gross. What? Borrow of moved value. Organization. Do I need to... What if I clone it in here? And then does that? No, it does not like that. Use of move value. Okay, let's think. Okay, so it is moved into closure on line 145. Okay, that makes sense. The variable moved due to use in the closure on line 146. And then, is the problem that organization is getting moved into here, and so we move organization in to this spawn local, and I don't think we then get it after that because we've given it away. So we need if I clone just before that call, does that solve the problem? No, it does not. So, because we're still moving organization into use effect with depths in this closure, and so we don't have access to it down here. Do I have to make... This seems really gross, and I'm not liking it. What if I change... No, 2 is terrible. What if I change that name there, and I change this to be... Oops, spelling, and wrong part of keyboard, and help. Okay. So that seemed to have solved that problem. Now, I don't know that I like... So this is... Oh, man. We may just have to deal with this stir slice string problem. So I've got all these capital S strings everywhere, and they are requiring that I clone constantly. And I'm not thrilled about that. I mean, it works, but I also know... I mean, it's not very rusty, whatever, we want to make of that. But it just... I'm cloning all the time. And here, I not only am I cloning, but I had to come up with a new name, and new names stink, so we don't like that. And I was tempted to do a bad name, so, right, that is not good. So, not thrilled about this. And I'm just going to have to deal with it at some point and change to stir slices. And maybe I should do that sooner rather than later, because I'm clearly adding more and more string stuff. And at some point, it's just going to get out ahead of me, and it's going to make it a lot more complicated to fix it. And I feel like if I had a stir slice here, then borrowing would do the right thing, and I wouldn't have to be cloning all over everywhere. And I could probably have avoided this clone, because I'd be passing a borrow in. Because nobody ever needs to change the string. The string is essentially immutable as far as the component's concerned. The organization came in from the outside. We don't have any need to touch it or change it. So we ought to be able to use a borrowed reference everywhere. But because I'm passing owned references around, that's annoying. Okay, and so this tells us that this is a reference to a string, which suggests that this probably is the organization. Let's do a print to confirm that. Web sys console log 1, I think it is. Yeah. Format, bang, we were passed as the arg to the callback. Boom, bop, boop, mystery, boop. Oh, come on, go away. Dot into, I think I'm going to need. Okay. So that I think will work. And let's see if we're compiling here. Excuse me. Hay fever, summer, 'tis the season, etc. Okay, let's oh, let me go away. Let me restart that. Pop open our window again. There we go. Now UMM CSI 3601 S20. Okay, we don't have our infinite loop anymore. That's good. And GitHub hasn't blacklisted us. That's also good. Yeah, so we were past the organization name as the dependency. So what do we do with that? If anybody's got any thoughts, I am more than open to hear them. So, I mean, we could, this just sounds ugly. We could, remember, we could store as a piece of state the current organization. And if the organization we're passed is different from the previous organization, then we make the call? I feel like that's like we're building too much state, and that there ought to be some hook that does that for us. I don't think that's helpful. Definitely don't want reducers. So effect seems to be like the only thing here that would be useful. But man, I don't really like the idea of storing the state and then storing the organization as state here and then comparing it. But I don't know what else to do. So I think for now that's what we'll do. And maybe I need to be doing some more homework about how React does these things. Although I don't know that that's actually going to be super helpful, because React is obviously quite different. Let organization state equal use state bang bang pipe and it will be, I want an empty string to be our starting state. Now, here's the question, is this going to be different from the thing that's passed in? Well, it would be at this point. So maybe we only update the state when we do the download. So let's log format bang. Oh, and format bang. And format bang. The org state is boom beep organization state dot into. That do a thing? No, because it's gonna want, I think we have to say star here to get the value out of it. Okay, that looks happier. Now this won't have done anything useful yet. Seaside 3601 S20 boom. Yeah, so the org state is empty. So they're different. Oh, hang on. So use effect with depths is never called. Oh, actually, let's change this to 22. Is anything ever even called? Aha! So use effects with depths is called with 22. The org state is still empty. Oh. Oh, I changed it to 22. I meant to change it to 20. What happens here? And look, oh, somehow something that I've done has magically fixed it. I wonder if it's just having the state. Oh. So by saying that the state now includes the, well, no, that doesn't make sense because we never update that. So why, what have we actually done that matters here? Was it literally just creating the state that changed it? Or using, okay, let's try undoing some things. Okay, I'm gonna make that go away. We're gonna comment ourselves back out of this until we can see what actually made it change. Okay. Seaside 3601 S20. Boom. Okay, those are S20s. If I change to S22, boom. It worked. Okay. So that logging didn't do anything. And now this organization state's not being used anywhere. If we comment that out, La 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 la. There we go. UMM Seaside 3601S20. Work. Okay. S22. Well, okay. I am super baffled now. Is it just that I gave this a name? Oh, and we do actually do something with it. Let's comment that line out and see if... So yeah, now mystery is now not being used anywhere. We got S20 and we got S22. So simply giving it a name? Or actually, it's probably, maybe it's this thing down here. We're saying it depends on that. And if that changes, maybe that's all that matters. So let's actually underscore that. And S20, and now S22. Yeah. So I suspect it's adding this down here. This is what mattered. So we're saying that we depend on the organization. So if the organization changes, we will call use effect with depths. And if the organization doesn't change, now is it smart about what that means? Yes. So nothing happened down here. Yeah, so I think it's being clever about, yeah, if you don't change things, if you've got the same state, something is being clever. Now, I guess I should be careful. The organization is being saved as state in several places, and so any one of them decides that nothing's changed, that might be enough. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. But it does seem to be dealing sensibly. So that's cool. Okay. Now, this is a terrible name, so we should probably change it to organization. Now I wonder then if we're passing the organization in here, maybe I don't need to clone. If I just called this organization, then, whoa, didn't like a lot of that. Because, it can't infer lifetimes properly. Oh. Because now this is an argument. We don't know how long this string will live. And so there's a problem. If we were using this clone up here, why is that better? Actually, I'm not entirely sure why that would be an improvement. I mean, I get why this is a problem, because the organization that's coming in this call, it doesn't know how long that organization might live. And since it's being passed into this spawn local, that could happen at any arbitrary time in the future, so we've got a lifetime problem. I'm not entirely sure why having this organization be the thing that gets copied in improves the situation, to be honest with you. I wonder if let organization equal organization dot clone. Does that fix that problem? How are we doing? Yeah, it does seem to fix the problem. So I don't quite get why cloning makes that problem go away. Because this still has lifetime that ends at the end of this call. Oh, but the ownership is moving in here and we're cloning. So it will last as long as it needs to in here. Is that what's happening? And without the clone, we're dependent on, I don't know. Actually, I don't really understand that. I suspect we now don't need this. Is that true? And we may not need this because we don't pass organization into this anymore because this isn't being moved in because we're passing it as an argument. So I think we may not need, okay, let's actually make sure we're compiling, make sure things are still running boy, I really could use some tests here. Well, I'm not sure how I would test a lot of this, especially since it involves calling GitHub, and that seems like not something I want to put in a test. So I think now we probably don't need this, and I can just say organization here. Wah, wah, wah. Wah, wah, wah. Nope. Oh, it's a lifetime thing again. So I do need to clone organization. Probably right here. Okay. That is happy. Okay. Let's make sure that works. CSI 3061 S20. Boom. Change to S22. Boom. Yeah. Okay. So I think we can get rid of a bunch of logging. Well, let's at least get rid of the commented out stuff. I think we could lose that. I think we could lose that because that now doesn't exist. Okay. Huh. So I think we have successfully resolved that issue of why the use effect with depths is only being called once. Yeah, okay. So that's good. I think we kind of dealt with that. I think the string versus stir slice business still is problematic and is going to need to be dealt with. And I might even try to deal with that today, because that's really, I feel like that problem's just getting worse and worse and worse and needs to be taken care of. But I think now would be a good time for a commit. Where's Get Cracking? There we are. Because we have done something kind of important. So we add a dependency on the organization in the repository list component. Good job. Makes the repository list component use effect with depths depend on the organization, so the component correctly re-renders when we change the organization, but doesn't go into some awful infinite loop of re-rendering because we've got new repositories. Blah, 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 blah. So is there anything else I want to say here? So that got deleted. We moved this down here. We added the name. Okay, no, I think that's pretty straightforward. So that was a lot of work to not actually change very much, as is often the case in programming. Okay, exciting. We did a thing. I'm very happy about that, actually. So thank you. What do we want to do? We also have error handling to deal with. Yeah. And obviously this is hopelessly wrong. And we have to turn the list of repositories in checkbox. And then I think I've got a note up here. My notes are all over the place now, which is not helpful. About, yeah, this. So could we, actually I want to do something about loading, because that would be, I think, easy. I think that's a piece of low-hanging fruit that we can do something about right away. Hi, Define Evil. Welcome. We are building a web app with Rust and U to batch archive a bunch of repositories in an organization. So I have, as an instructor, university instructor, I end up with these organizations that have dozens of, many dozens, 70, 80 repositories in them. And the GitHub archive by hand mechanism is just way too slow to archive that many. And so I want to automate the process. And I also am sort of learning Rust. So I was like, great. Let's try to use Rust and YEW to build a web app that would do this. I don't know. What am I supposed to be doing? I think my settings are higher than 900p. But to be honest with you, I'm a total noob about streaming. I've been doing this for like 2 months, and you're the first person to say anything about it looking fuzzy. I am not seeing any bandwidth issues on my end, but that doesn't mean there aren't some. It's possible that somebody in the house got up and decided to like beat on the internet, and I just haven't noticed. But I'm all green here, so I'm sorry if you're getting fuzzy. That because I realize that sucks. That's not a fun thing. And I will have to try to look into that, especially if anybody else is having issues like that. Let me know, because I don't want to sort of create an environment where you're like, oh, I can't read the words, because that would stink. Yeah, sorry about that. So what the low-hanging fruit I was thinking would be good was, let's see, if we reload the fairly ugly app at the moment, I've got to do something about that. But if I put in an organization and I hit submit, there's a definite pause before we get the list. And it would be a simple thing, I think, to add a loading message. So the trick is, what would that look like? I mean, a simple thing would be, so where is this? Oh yeah, so right now we're just iterating over the list of repositories. We could, as a simple thing, check to see if that's empty. And if it's empty, then just write loading. So I've been, well, how long have I been trying to learn Rust? Oh, hey, nice to see you, Lou McCall. So I have poked very gently at Rust for probably 2 years, or starting 2 years ago. Read some things, was like, I really should probably try to learn some Rust. Managed to like go through some like simple, try some stuff out. Read parts of the book, but kind of in random order, and played around with it a little bit in some classes, and then but never really had time to do much more than that. And I'm on sabbatical this year coming up, and so I decided that one of the things I was going to do on sabbatical was try to do more programming. I was a university faculty. I don't program a lot. I teach other people to program, but I don't get to do it very much. And I really like programming. It's part of an important part of how I got into this. And so I decided I would try a live stream. So this has been happening on and off since early June. And there've been some complications because I blew up my knee in June and had knee surgery in July, so I've missed some things and yada yada, and you don't care. But so I went through the first set of live streams, was actually going through the Rustlings exercises here, And I learned a lot at doing that. Actually, that was super helpful. And then starting, how many episodes ago? So I think this is the 5th episode of doing the Rust and You thing. So starting 4-5 episodes ago, I started building this app, and doing a fair bit of flailing in places, because I don't know React, and You is based on React, so I'm sort of kind of half learning React along the way, and I don't know Rust very well, so there's a certain amount of fiddling around, but we're making progress, so that's happy. I've actually generally enjoyed it. So yeah, hope that was helpful. I don't know. Yeah, going from a big company to a small company, that's a big deal. Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that know React really well. Like a lot of our alums. We don't actually teach React, but we teach other things, and people have been able to obviously learn React on the job. And so React is clearly huge out in the world. And Rust, I have found super interesting and intellectually challenging. I really like a lot of ideas in Rust. I feel like if you get Rust, you will understand programming in profound ways that it's easy to not deal with in other languages. The one thing I have found as a new person, and also thinking about teaching Rust, the one thing I found a little awkward is there's actually more magic in Rust than I would have expected. I mean, I sort of came to Rust expecting really no magic. That was part of the point, was that you had to like really think about things and understand them, with the borrowing and all of that. But the from into business, for example, I think it's really, there's several times where I've been like, oh, I totally don't understand why that worked. And I think I understand it a lot better now. The wrestling exercises helped a lot with that. But I think there are places where like a thing turns into another thing in ways that are surprising to me, and I feel like that would be a tough thing for a student to like know what to expect. It's great syntactic sugar though, and probably really helps the productivity of professional programmers. So I get why it's there, and it is still fully controlled by the type system, so it's not magic in the way like JavaScript turns, Booleans into arrays and weird stuff like that. But it's still a little strange. Yeah. And we do a lot of functional stuff in our program, actually. Not using React, but we, like, one of the main ways people start our program is with Scheme. So with a strong emphasis on functional programming and recursion, because we think those are important. Yeah, we're not at the moment doing a lot with React. They are doing TypeScript and JavaScript, so they're seeing functionally stuff there as well. And I like the things like the iterators and maps and stuff. Like, I think this, where is it? Actually, it's this thing right here. I think that this loop collect thing is really slick here. I really like that. But again, the collect is another piece of magic where it's not obvious that we would take a list of, so we turn this into an iterator, we filter out the previously archived repositories, and then we map over each repository, we create this HTML block. It's not obvious that collect would take a bunch of HTML blocks and turn them into a single HTML block. I mean, I get that collect is defined somewhere. It's probably, would it even tell us right here? No, it does not tell us actually which one that is. But there is a collect being implemented on an iter of repositories. No, it's got to be an iter of item. What does this map return? Probably an iter of items, and turns them into a single item. But so collect is kind of like reduce, but not the same. There is a reduce, which is like where you provide the reduction function and it does all the joining for you. Collect takes, so let's see, takes anything iterable and turns it into a relevant collection. And so this is one of the things that's weird, is that it takes an iterator and turns it into some kind of collection, and the types tell it what kind of collection to turn it into. So it's able to infer which collect to use based on the types. And this happens at compile time, not at runtime, because all the types are known at compile time, because Rust. And so you often see things like, so here's an example. So if you have results that are either, some value you care about or some error, if you have an iterable over a bunch of results, you can use collect to turn that into a single result of the values in question or the first error that it runs into. And so that's actually really nifty. But as I say, it's really general, that can make type inference kind of complicated. And a common use of it is if you have an iterator, collect will just, and you don't say anything fancy, it'll turn that into a vector. So here we have this vector of 1, 2, 3. We turn that into an iterator. We map doubling across it. Now at this point, the map is still returning an iterator. We don't actually have a collection. And these are actually lazy. If you don't actually collect them, the work won't get done. And so by collecting here, we're saying we're going to take those values and put them into something. What something we're going to put them into? We're going to put them into a vec of i32s. So it knows what it needs to build from this type here, and then assembles them together into that vector, and then you get this vector 246, and life is good. So it's kind of like C++ templates, but it isn't really, well, there are aspects of it that is, in the sense that if you have a vec of U8s and a vec of i32s, it will actually create code for both of those. So in that sense, it's kind of like templating. But I think the typing system is a lot richer and generally more informative, and the error messages are generally better. That's my read. Now, I last was anything serious about C++ like 25 years ago, and so I don't know if that so you don't get that overhead, and in fact one of the things they talk about a lot in Rust is this idea of zero cost abstractions. So because everything's known at compile time in most circumstances, it can actually take something fancy like this and basically turn it into a highly optimized low-level for loop, without any of the memory management waffle that you would expect in a lot of other languages doing this kind of stuff. So it's really going to make this the kind of optimized low-level code that you would probably write yourself, if you were like really trying to optimize this because you felt like this was like crucial to the performance of your system. I am not all that mad about the compile speed. I think actually, okay, this is totally like, hot take, soapbox nonsense, and you should probably pay very little attention to what I'm saying. But I think that the emphasis on instant feedback is sometimes doing more harm than good. I think that, and I love modern IDEs and autocomplete and all of, instant underlining. I love that stuff totally. But I think that it can encourage us to program with our hands and not with our brains, right? We don't think about stuff. We like type. It becomes kind of a game. Like I'm typing things to make the editor not shout at me. But I don't necessarily know what I did or why I did it. I was just like, the editor said that thing was bad. And if Rust compile speed could be instantaneous, I would totally vote for that. What I do value a lot, though, is the feedback you get from the compiler. The compiler, when something doesn't work, the compiler is actually incredibly informative in a lot of cases. I've had a few instances where I've been like, I have no idea what the compiler is trying to tell me here. Now, that, in fairness, may be me more than the compiler, right? That I'm still learning the language, and part of learning Rust is learning how to read the compiler. But I think if you can read what the compiler's telling you, the compiler's giving you like really rich, deep information about what your code's doing, and in a way that I don't know that I've ever seen in any other compiler. And if I have to today wait a little while to get that feedback, personally, I'm all about it. I realize that isn't going to be everybody's gig, but I think it's a price I'm more than happy to pay. Is it, again, if the Rust compiler could move to instant compilation, I would be completely happy with that. But I really wouldn't want to get faster compilation at the expense of less information. I actually have found them to be, again, you have to learn to read them. And I'm not teaching Rust to beginners. I mean, I'm teaching, if I teach Rust to anybody at this point, it'll be to people with some, probably a year of programming experience already, although, that could change. But I've actually found when I've used them a little bit in classes, used Rust a little bit in classes a couple of times, I think the students generally found the error messages to be quite helpful rather than unhelpful. But I do think it takes some getting used to. And certainly I don't think they're any harder to learn than, say, Java error messages. And I think they're just so much more complete. But it is a different way of thinking about things, and I realize, that won't be for everybody, but I quite like it. When I was in grad school, Edgar Dijkstra of Dijkstra's shortest path algorithm and all that stuff was a faculty at UT Austin when I was there, and Dijkstra was a highly opinionated individual, and we can get into that someday. But one of his things is he thought people, and this was back in the 80s, so I mean way less support for instant feedback and fast programming than we have now. But Edgar thought people were getting feedback way too fast, and they were thinking too little and just trying stuff to get the compiler to be happy. And he would semi-jokingly say, beginning programmers should have to etch their programs into stone and turn them in. To force them to really seriously think about what they were doing. And of course, he had learned to program in the 50s, when, if you were lucky, you were typing things in a deck of cards and turning it in, and waiting hours, if not days, to get feedback. So a wildly different universe than the universe that we have now. So, okay. So I hope that was helpful, useful, not just endlessly babbling. So I think we could put a simple thing we could do with the loading. Oh, so let me go back because it's been 100 years. Well, you're very welcome. It was a pleasure. Faculty, we like to talk. So there's definitely a pause there, and I would like something to say loading. Now, I think it would be pretty easy to just, if the list of repositories is empty, to display loading ... Now, it's less clear to me how to catch changing organizations. To be honest with you, that's not as obvious to me. But let's start with just putting loading in if the repository list is empty. And then we'll... I don't know about suspense. Is that a library, a thing, a technique? Is that a React thing, maybe? Don't know. Oh, it's React concept. Oh, well. Rust U suspense. Oh, look at that. Well, look at that. That looks exactly like what this is. Hot damn. Okay, so let's see. So we have a fallback, and then we have a suspense component. Oh, that does look exactly like what we want. Well done. Thank you. Well, look at that. See, if if I actually read all the documentation, think of how smart I'd be. Well, luckily I have you awesome people telling me cool stuff. So actually we could totally have a fallback here and then use a suspense tag around it. And that would work. Maybe. Okay. So let's see. So here we got load user on load user complete. So I think that one of the things I'd have to do is have functions like these that would do all this stuff, because it's got to know that this failed to know that it can use the fallback, or that it should use the fallback. And that would require a fair bit of change. Do I want to get into that at 11:20? Wow, so it was internal for over a year. Yikes. That's a long time. So this would require some significant changes, because right now, oops, no, wrong. Right now, like, we're getting the users down buried. Now, maybe this is a sign that I should do something like this. I mean, the fact that I have the scope for the function, then this scope that's created to provide some local scoping for some names, and then the scope for use effect with depths, and then the scope for spawn local. I mean, I'm pretty deep in the scopes here, and that's rarely a good sign. And switching to something like this would probably simplify some of this. Now, so load user we would have basically this body would become like load repositories or get repositories or something, and we'd have to have some notion of whether it was complete. Do we? So let's see. We're gonna use user. So this would be, we're going to try to access the list of repositories. We're going to call load user, and if we get something, then we're done. If we get nothing, that means it's still loading. How are we going to know that? So actually, if load repositories made this call, then we can check. Yeah, well, the U documentation is definitely incomplete in places. I mean, you can tell you're in O.X.Y land. There are places where the documentation is pretty thin, and there are places where essentially they just kind of assume that you know React, or that you can go learn stuff from the React documentation. Which, given that I don't know React, has been an interesting challenge, but we live. So we'd have to sort of be able to see, like, did this feature resolve? So we'd have to have a way of finding out if that feature resolved, and that would be when we would load user would somehow return a none when that's true. Yeah. Let's see. That's a struct component. And we're not doing a struct component. and they don't have a functional component example, and then they send you off to the suspense example. Does this actually have okay, so we have a please wait component that says please wait 5 seconds. The app content calls use sleep. Is that over? Okay, that's over here. Let's have a look at this. So we have the sleep state, which has a suspension, and we have a constructor. So we get so we can create a suspension from a future. So that's important, I bet. So where we have the future, oops, no, wrong one. There we go. Where we do this, I suspect that we will instead do something like suspension from future, and then all our code that makes the HTTP request would be in something like this. And then here they just wait 5 seconds. And then reducible for sleep state. Not sure what that's doing. And why that needs to be there. Use sleep. Oh, use reducer probably is why we need that. And if it's resumed, then we'll return okay, and otherwise we'll say we're in some sort of await state, I guess. And then coming back to main, we call use sleep. So this would definitely involve some significant rewriting, which at 11:27 I don't think I want to get into. I think I probably want to do a little more homework. I do feel like you're right, though, that this may be the right thing to do, but it's going to involve some significant restructuring of the code, and I don't think I want to get into that right now. So I'm going to leave that tab open to remind me to come back to this later, and I will deal with that then. So I'm going to go back to my really simple idea just as a first kind of growth step. If repositories, hello, thank you, dot is empty, then I'm going to return HTML bang, I cannot spell, p loading dot 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 p else and then I have to shift all of you guys over. Now, oh, this has got to be in quotes and curly braces because it's actually Rust and not HTML. Now we are successfully compiled. Loading. Bing. Okay. I mean, it's not great, to be honest with you. And it doesn't do anything if I change, which is a little too bad. I wonder if actually if I set the state before we call spawn local, I wonder if I set this to be the empty vec, then that would be a useful thing. Repositories, can't spell, dot set vec bang boom bop biddly. Now compiling, yes, we compiled, that's a happy thing. UMMC side 3601 S20 loading. Now if I change it to S22, hey, that was nice. It's a little crude, and I don't, I mean, in a perfect world, this would be nice to avoid this, and I think this is, where suspense would probably be. Interesting. Set state in use effect is typically a code smell due to duplicate render. Oh, really? Oh, well, thank you. This is where not really knowing React is useful. So this should actually happen when the button is pressed. Oh, but actually, I can't do that here because well, I guess I could do it outside because this is only called, yeah, so I could do that. Well, that's a little weird, right? Because this creates the state right here and initializes it. And if I set that to empty anywhere else, I think I'll end up wiping out the repositories I downloaded from. So I really only want to set it to empty right before I'm about to download new repositories. If I move it, copy, comment, like if I put it up here, I feel like that's gonna possibly wipe things out in an unpleasant way. Wah, wah, wah. Come on. There we go. UMM Seaside 361 S20. Submit. Yeah. Whoa. Bad. We were gone into an infinite loop there. That would not be good. So that was not a good move. So I don't think that's. I think we kind of have to do it here, so that we only set it to empty right before we're arranging to repopulate it. So, and I don't think we get a duplicate render here. So maybe this is just a difference between Rust and U. Here, so when let me go back to the code. Okay, so let's see. When is the organization altered? Okay, so if I put I hit submit, loading, done. Now let's go back to the code. So what's actually happening here? So there is a text input, and that's the text box that I'm typing into, and it has a state, and I feel like I've got too many organization states, and there's a better way to perhaps do this, maybe with context. I don't know, but it has an internal state, which is the value of its field, and when you hit the submit button, it passes that up right here. So so there's actually, and this is why I feel like almost certainly there's a better way to do this, and I kind of feel like context is the way to do it, but I'm not 100% sure. This is there. 3 components have an organization state. The home page has an organization state. The text field has an organization state, and the repository list has an organization state, which doesn't seem good. And the submit button is in this text input component. So if we go find text input, there's text input. So the text input component has a field content state, and there's an on click on this button. So this button's got this on click callback, and when we do that, we emit the current contents of the field, and that sends them back up to the parent component, which is our app at the moment. And the parent component then sends those down into the repository list component. So go back down to the bottom. So the parent component, when there is a change in the organization, then so it's got this state, and it passes that into the repository list here, and then the repository list gets that. So right, on change here is really on submit. That's a good way to think about that. I wonder if that's a name I could change and should change, or if that's well, that was down below. Oh yeah, right here. So that is just a name. Oh no, but that's a field in callback. Is that true? No. Text. Oh, it's in text input props. So that's me. I did that. So I could change this to on submit, and that would be a better name. So let's. I'm actually going to make that change. Rename symbol on submit. Boom. And that changed that down there, and then did this change down here. Didn't like that. That's just because it didn't know to change this. Rename symbol on submit. And happy now? No, not happy now. On change not found, line 98. Wow. Okay, so it wasn't able to figure out that had to change. Well, fine. Rename symbol on submit. Boom. La la la. So you're suggesting that line 197 should also be able to set the repositories to be empty. So if line 197 doesn't know about the repository list, so I don't know that it has any way of, because the list of repository is state inside this component, and so short of moving that state out of here and again into something like a context, which seems less desirable in this instance, I don't see how I could set the repository list to be empty here. Yeah, I'm not sure how that would work. So did this actually all compile? I should confirm that. Hey, it did. And does it work now without going in infinite loop? UMMC side 3601 S20. I think we're good. Yes. And if we change it to 22, boom. And I don't think we're getting, if we develop JavaScript console, I don't think we're getting extra renders, are we? Oh, maybe we are. So we get that called twice. Oh, I think the second one happens because we added all the, so this was the first call, and it called use effect with depths, and then it called it again after that returned, and it filled everything in. No, actually, I'm not clear on why that one happened. This makes sense, and then I think it gets called, and then nothing gets re-rendered the second time, but I'm not sure where this one's coming from. So maybe that's part of what you're yeah, so the repo list is its own component, and it's being given the organization and being asked to go off and get the stuff and then render it. So I think I want to commit that renaming while I'm thinking about it, because that was all that happened there. Oh no, we've got this as well. So actually we've got this loading. So there's two things that happened here. Loading message. This adds a very simple loading message while we're waiting for our HTTP request to complete. It's possible that the U suspense tool would be a better choice here, but that would involve some non-trivial rewriting. I also renamed on change to on submit at the suggestion of Define Eagle on the live stream. Boom. So when you say the repo list should be keyed on organization, I'm not sure I understand that. What do you mean by that? And actually, it's good. It's a good conversation. You know React a lot better than I do, and in a weird backwards way, one of my goals here is not just to learn you, but also to understand some things about React, because I've never really used it. And so learning a little React kind of under the covers, backwards, whatever, is totally useful. I'm totally good for that. So thanks for the feedback. So I don't know that I understand what you mean by the repo list should be keyed on organization. It should definitely depend on it, which is where this dependency here in use effect with depths was important. But I don't know. I feel like you're saying something more like key value in a map or something maybe, but I'm not sure quite where you're headed with that one. And I mentioned earlier, I think I sort of feel like context would be a better way to deal with a lot of this stuff. So my, again, limited understanding, all components optionally take a key. And here, I think the equivalent would be the properties list, which is a structure you get to make. But notice that simply having the property list change didn't it did actually. So if I switch to just use effect here, no, it didn't. Simply having the property list change, and the property list is just for repository list props, is just the organization. And it wasn't smart enough to kind of only re-render when that string had changed. That didn't happen. Because we still saw it like spinning infinitely. That I had at the beginning of the today's stream, I tried getting rid of the with depths, thinking maybe it would be kind of smart enough to only re-render when the props, the incoming props had changed, but that turned out to not be true. We went into infinite loop land, and that was not good, so we didn't want to do that. Oh, hey, wisdom has occurred. I look forward to that. So, as I was mentioning context, the fact that 3 of my properties all have organization as... Oh, okay, go for it. I will wait. Because if you understand stuff, man, that would be great. Because I only kind of understand stuff. You'd expect when the org changes, the component re-renders. Yes, agreed. And that does seem to be true in general. But it over re-renders. Like it seems to re-render when the repository state changes. And I don't know. Yeah. And I think that's the issue, is that when we call use effect with depths, that changes the state, and so it re-renders, which is good, except then it runs through all this again. Yeah. so this line is going to force a re-render. In fact, this line presumably. Oh, that's where that extra call came in the. That's, I bet, where this guy right here happens. Is that forces a re-render, which takes it back to the loading state. So we get actually two re-renders here. One takes us to loading, and then a second one, after we've gotten the HTTP response, has all the things. And so this is the first call. This is the re-render after we set the list of repositories to empty. And this is the re-render that actually displays all the repositories in the new organization. So that at least explains that to me. So yeah, when the prop org changes, why aren't the repos cleared? Because the state doesn't automatically clear itself. Like we're using, so this, the use state takes a closure which provides the initial value, but it will, I think once you've got something there that persists across calls, so when it comes back here a second time, it's like, I've already got state. I'm not going to like empty that. And so off it goes. And the state persists between renders. Yes, exactly. And so we have to, by hand, reset it when we want to reset it, which would be, I think, basically before we make the call out, or organize the future that will make the call to GitHub. And if we key the whole thing on organization, I think you mean, then we wouldn't have persistence between renders. Because we need the list of repositories to be saved, because I think that the only good way we can get we get the list of repositories down here in this future, so happening off in another not thread, and we have to have a way of like putting that in something so that the component can use it. And I think states are the way that they do that. Can we render repo list key equals org? Oops, I want to be down farther. So I think that is key in your mind a special thing? I wonder if that's a deal. Rust U component key. Key. The word key does not appear in this page. That doesn't strike me as likely to win. Then I don't know. Okay, so this is what we're doing. We're collecting. Key lists. Yeah, I don't think that's relevant. Huh. Well, that could be useful, perhaps. But it's not, I think, solving the problem that we're interested in right now. So I don't think that we can do key equals. I think that we just, so this organization equals comes from the repository list property. So, I could make a field in this struct called key, or change this name to key, but it's not going to actually do anything special, I don't think. I think that the props are just whatever the props are. So I don't think we can do anything with that. Such is life. And I don't know that would help much. I mean, we could try, if I put key in here, does anything useful happen? I'm kind of guessing that the answer is no, and it will probably fail. Yeah. So I think that this method build not found is essentially saying that this key doesn't match anything in the properties. Do we get a better error message here? No. So this is a place where the errors weren't great. But I think that the key is not a special name here. And so we're just stuck having to, oh, so you're thinking maybe we could have key and organization. Well, we could try that. Organization.clone. What? Ooh, well, that compiled, it looks like. I don't know if it did anything. So no, we didn't change any other code. So now I guess the question would be, with this, do we need to wipe? So can we get rid of this, and will it wipe the set of repositories on its own? Okay, so that worked, although I don't think I saw the loading, but maybe it was just too fast. Yeah, I don't think we're getting the loading message ever. Let me reload the page, because we should get it at least here, because that should be empty here. Loading. Okay, so that did that. Oh, and it did it there too. So maybe we just had blindingly fast internet for a hot second. Oh, well, so key does seem to do something. That's interesting, given that the documentation in U didn't seem to say anything about that at all. I wonder. Okay, let's see. I want to keep that tab open. So let's see. Key. No, nothing. Properties. Nothing. Oh. Now, if we go to GitHub, we look at where is the actual code? Is that in here? No, that's all benchmarky stuff. Packages. Source. Functional hooks. No. Maybe what's in here? Key. I don't know. I am not seeing key. There is a key. Oh, that's in lists. Virtual DOM. Oh, so there is a key in the virtual DOM stuff, and I wonder if that's what's actually happening here. Oh, and you think that this list here would be useful, because looked to me like that would be, oh, so that's in a div. Oh, so maybe so if we have the keys, it will tell us that it helps the system. I back up, use words. If we key things, the system has a better information on when it needs to re-render things, and so the performance improves, is the way I think I'm hearing this. Oh, and actually I want to okay, I'm going to reload this. Okay, it said loading, and so it called repository list twice. Once with nothing, and once presumably after it had rendered. If I change it to another year, yeah, we definitely have less rendering here, where we had 3 renders before, or 3 calls to repository list per organization. We now only have 2. So we have the initial one that then causes the spawn local to happen, and then we have a second one when the state actually updates, I think. So we probably did make it go faster. Yay team. So that was cool. And it's 12:03. And I should probably wrap up. I've got family stuff and lunch I need to do. So that was actually super helpful. I think I understand's a strong word. I think I have an improved understanding of what's going on in here and the rendering. And we did manage to successfully get the loading thing to work. So that's actually very cool. So I think I can remove this now, which is a good thing, because that was kind of ugly. And what all has changed here? I think we just removed that and added the key. Now it's sort of a bummer that we've got the organization being used twice there. That's sort of a stinker. So actually, let me do a little sort of catch up here. So I stream on, the current schedule is Saturdays and Tuesdays at this time. So 10 to noon Central Time, whatever that is where you live. So twice a week. I will Yeah, you're correct. It does make sense. If the org changes, the old list is meaningless and probably should just go away. It's annoying to me that we have this, that we pass this twice. I feel like we ought to be able to pass this once somehow and have it be both the key and the field and the properties, but maybe not. So I will be here Tuesday, and yeah, I could. So maybe I could actually change organization to key in my struct. Might want to look at that possibility, because that would be potentially useful. So I should be here Tuesday on the 2nd, and the following Saturday the 6th, and Tuesday the 9th. So the next 3 Tuesdays and Saturdays I should be here. Saturday the 13th is unclear. Our child is moving to Madison, Wisconsin to start graduate school in library science. And the week of the 15th, somewhere in there, we will definitely be traveling to Wisconsin and helping move. And I don't know exactly when that's going to happen, but it might mean that the 13th and possibly the 16th will be cut out of August. But I should have the next 3 should be here as normal. So, oh no, doesn't work at Epic. Is gonna become a librarian at the University of Madison. So, we've got students, alums that work at Epic, but yeah, not this. And I think you're right. Like, I could, even if I could call this field key instead of organization, that doesn't the readability is not good on that front. If there is some way I could sort of tell the properties that this is the key, but I'm going to call it organization, that would be kind of cool. And I don't know if that's feasible or not. But no, there are actually other things happening in Madison than Epic. Not many, but there are other things happening in Madison. So, okay, I'm going to commit this and get out of here, because my family's going to think I'm supposed to show up and do stuff. But thank you all for coming. As always, it is super cool to have people here, and I love the conversation and all the good ideas. So thank you very much. And definitely don't worry about the too much backseat driving. I think I learned a lot. And we didn't write a lot of code today in some sense, but I learned a lot, and frankly, I'm more interested in the learning than in producing the product. The project's just a way to sort of make the learning happen. So I'm totally cool with that. So add a key to the repository list. Man, I cannot spell repository list. As suggested by @defineevil, we added a key field to the repository list tag in the top level component. This forces the component to be destroyed and rebuilt when the thank you. I will follow that up. when the organization changes, which appears to improve performance, and also ensures that the repository list is empty when the organization changes. This means we don't have to explicitly reset the repository list in use effect with deps. Boom. I can't see around my own microphone, which is right in front of the commit message box. Okay, so I think that takes care of that. And thank you all very much. I think that sorts this out. I will be here Tuesday to do more of the same. I'm not sure what of the issues. We still have to do something about the error handling. We still have to turn the repositories into a checkbox list. Still have to do something about paging. All of those things are still real. I still want to do something about the string and stir slices. Yeah, so there's definitely work to be done, but I think progress was made. So thank you all very much. I'm going to check out now, and I will talk to you all later. Bye, doom.